Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something pretty interesting that's happening with Ethereum. You know how it's growing.
Yeah, massively.
Well, the solution's meant to help it scale. These roll-ups, they've kind of ended up splitting things up a bit.
That's a good way to put it. You've got users, liquidity, the money, and even developers spread thin across all these different roll-up platforms.
It's like having amazing tools, but they're all in separate workshops. It makes building something big together kind of tricky.
Exactly. And look, things like Arbitrum, Optimism, they were absolutely needed, right? For
Right.
handling more transactions, lower fees. But yeah, it does mean if you're on one roll-up, interacting with something hot on another can be, well, difficult or costly.
Or just confusing, and for devs,
Yeah.
more complexity. They have to think about deploying everywhere if they want the biggest audience.
Totally. It adds layers.
Precisely. Which brings us to what we're focusing on today, the Omni Network, or OMNI. It's being positioned as a potential bridge builder, like an integrated roll-up layer, trying to tie these Ethereum neighborhoods back together.
Uh-huh.
We've been digging into info straight from the Omni team, their goals, the tech, their roadmap.
Yeah, getting the official line on it.
So our mission today is pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what Omni Network actually is, how it plans to connect these Ethereum pieces, and, well, why this might be quite important for Ethereum's future and all those dApps people use.
Okay, so let's really focus on that core problem first. Fragmentation.
Right.
Like we said, rollups helped Ethereum scale, lower costs, great. But the side effect is, maybe a big DeFi platform has most of its activity on Arbitrum.
Uh-huh.
So if you're mainly using Optimism, you might feel a bit left out, or you have to bridge assets over, which is another step.
Yeah, it's like your favorite bookstore only having a branch across town.
Yeah.
Bit of a hassle. And for the people building these apps, instead of just perfecting their product,
They're juggling multiple deployments, figuring out cross-roll-up communication themselves. It can definitely slow things down, make the experience less smooth than it could be.
So the key takeaway here is roll-ups solved one big problem, but kind of created another, a more divided Ethereum landscape.
Spot on. And if you're trying to understand the big picture of Ethereum, navigating all these different, interconnected but separate roll-ups can feel like a lot.
Information overload for sure.
Exactly. And Omni Network steps in saying, hey, we can fix this. They're basically proposing themselves as a new layer 1 blockchain specifically designed to be the glue for this whole ecosystem.
Okay, Omni the connector. So let's get more
Cool.
specific. What does an integrated roll-up layer actually mean in practice? How does it work?
Right. So at its core, Omni is a brand new standalone blockchain, a layer 1. But its whole reason for existing is to make these different Ethereum rollups act more like one big system.
Right.
The main pitch is enabling developers to build what they're calling natively global applications.
Natively global.
Yeah, the idea is you build your app once, and it can instantly tap into all the users, all the liquidity across Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, whatever rollup is connected to Omni, right from the get-go.
That sounds ambitious, a potential game changer, like you said. So how do they pull that off? What's the tech behind it? The key parts.
Okay, there are basically 4 main ingredients in the Omni protocol recipe. First, you've got the external rollups themselves, Arbitrum, Optimism, etc., the ones we already know.
Right, the existing layer 2s.
Second, you have the Omni validator nodes. Now, this is a network of computers anyone can join, so it's permissionless. They use a consensus system called Comet BFT. It's pretty well regarded, fast, secure.
Oh yeah, Comet BFT.
And what's really interesting is how they're secured. It's a dual staking thing. Validators lock up both the OMNI token, the network's own coin, and ETH that's been restaked via things like EigenLayer.
Ah, restaked ETH. So leveraging Ethereum security too. What do these validators do?
Their main job is to verify messages going between the different rollups and also to validate transactions that happen on the Omni chain itself.
Got it. So they're like the border guards checking passports between roll-up countries. What's number 3?
Third is the Omni blockchain itself. You can think of this as the central switchboard or coordination point. It's the single source of truth for all those messages flying between layer 2s, and also for anything happening in Omni's own little processing space, which they call the Omni EVM.
Omni EVM, like its own smart contract environment.
Exactly. And the fourth piece, relayers.
Relayers, what's their role?
These are also permissionless. Anyone can be a relayer. Their job is pretty simple. Take the messages that the Omni validators have already approved and actually deliver them to the final destination rollup. So if a message needs to go from Arbitrum to Polygon via Omni, the relayer makes sure it gets to Polygon.
Okay, so they're the delivery drivers making sure the cross rollup mail gets to the right address.
Pretty much, yeah.
So if I try an analogy,
Mm.
maybe the rollups are like different cities,
Mm-hmm.
and Omni is like the national highway system connecting them.
Mm.
Validators are the toll booth checking things, and relayers are the trucks carrying goods between cities. Is that kind of close?
That works too. Yeah, it highlights Omni as that core infrastructure enabling smooth movement and communication between otherwise separate places.
Cool. Okay, let's shift to the OMNI token itself. Native tokens are always super important in these networks. What does OMNI actually do? What are its jobs?
Right. The OMNI token has four main roles here. First, it's what they call a universal gas resource. Remember those relayers delivering messages?
Yeah, the delivery drivers.
They get paid in OMNI for doing that work. So sending info from, say, Optimism to Base via Omni will cost a little bit of OMNI to pay the relayer.
Okay, makes sense. Got to pay for the delivery service. What's the second role?
Second, OMNI is the native gas token for the Omni EVM. Just like you need ETH to do stuff on Ethereum mainnet, you need OMNI to pay for any transactions or smart contract executions that happen directly on the Omni Network's own execution layer.
Gotcha. So it fuels Omni's internal engine too. Third
role is network governance. If you hold OMNI tokens, you get a say in the network's future. You can vote on proposals for upgrades, new features, that kind of thing.
So community control over the protocol's direction. Standard, but important. And the last one, you mentioned security earlier.
Yes, the fourth role is staking, and this is key. Omni uses that dual staking model we touched on. Security comes from both staked OMNI tokens and restaked ETH via eigenlayer.
Right.
The idea is this creates a really robust security foundation by combining the value and incentives of both assets. It's basically piggybacking on Ethereum's existing economic security, which is pretty smart.
That dual staking does sound like a strong point. Leveraging ETH's gravity, almost. Okay, let's talk numbers for the token. Total supply, 100 million OMNI. That's the cap.
Correct.
And the initial circulating supply, back around April 12th, 2024, was roughly 10.4 million tokens, so about 10.4% of the total.
That's right. And we know about 20% was sold in private rounds, raising around $18 million. Interestingly, at two different price points, $0.18 and $1.50 per OMNI. Quite a difference there.
Yeah. And also, 3.5 million tokens, or 3.5%, were allocated to the Binance launch pool, which started mid-April 2024. So that gives you a picture of the initial distribution. Okay. And just to reiterate, that security model using both OMNI and restaked ETH seems like a central part of their value proposition.
Absolutely. It aligns incentives and aims for really strong economic security right from the start by tapping into the wider Ethereum ecosystem.
All right, let's get into some more of the cool tech features Omni talks about. They mentioned a modular node architecture called Octane, integrated with Ethereum's Engine API. What's the benefit of separating the consensus part from the execution part in their nodes?
Yeah, Octane. This modular design is quite clever. Think of it like separating the engine execution from the steering and transmission consensus in a car.
Okay.
It means you can upgrade or tweak one part, say, improve the execution engine without needing to overhaul the whole system. It offers flexibility. And integrating with the Engine API means it can potentially plug into standard Ethereum client software more easily, maybe making it simpler to keep up with Ethereum updates.
Makes sense. Flexibility and compatibility. They also talk about integrated consensus using Comet BFT and something called ABCI++COM. What does that mean for, like, network speed or efficiency?
So Comet BFT, as we said, is fast. Integrated consensus here basically means their validators can handle two jobs at once. Validating those cross-rollup messages and validating transactions on the Omni EVM simultaneously. ABCI++ is just an interface standard that helps the Omni application talk efficiently to the Comet BFT consensus engine.
Okay.
The bottom line for you, the user or developer, is that this setup helps Omni process everything quickly and efficiently across all the connected rollups.
And this tech foundation enables those natively global applications, or NGAs you mentioned. How exactly does the Omni EVM make it simpler for developers to build apps that work across multiple rollups?
This is one of the really interesting parts. So instead of a dev deploying their contracts on Arbitrum, then on Optimism, then on Base, and then building complicated bridges between them.
Which sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. With the Omni EVM, the idea is the developer deploys their contract once onto Omni. And the Omni Network itself handles propagating that contract's logic and interface to all the connected rollups.
Wow, okay.
So your app just becomes available everywhere automatically, more or less. The huge win is less complexity for the developer and potentially fewer bugs or security risks that often come with complex bridging solutions. It shifts the hard work of interoperability onto the Omni layer itself.
Build once, deploy everywhere. Within the Omni-connected universe anyway. That feels like a big deal for devs. They also highlight sub-second verification. How do they get transaction confirmations that fast?
Well, primarily it's down to that Comet BFT consensus engine. Again, it's designed for fast finality. But they also mention using other tricks like pre-confirmations and transaction insurance. These are basically ways to give users a very high probability, almost instantly, that their transaction will go through, even before the absolute final block confirmation happens. So for you interacting with an app, it feels near real time. A big improvement over waiting minutes sometimes on other chains.
Speed is always good. And it sounds like they're trying to be welcoming to existing tech too. They talk about diverse rollup support and backwards compatibility. How easy is it for current rollups or apps to plug into Omni?
Yeah, that seems to be a major design goal. Make it easy to join the party. They're aiming for compatibility with different virtual machines, coding languages, data availability methods, basically, however the rollups are built. And for apps already live on these rollups, the good news is they probably don't need to rewrite their core smart contracts. The main changes would likely be on the front end, how the app talks to the Omni Network to send those cross-rollup messages.
So less heavy lifting for existing projects. That's crucial for adoption, right?
Definitely. Lowering the barrier to entry is key.
Okay, let's talk about progress. They've run several testnets. What do the numbers tell us?
The testnets give us a feel for real-world usage and interest. Their first one, Origins, saw like 1.5 million transactions, 150,000 users, pretty decent start. Then Overdrive ramped up significantly. 6 million transactions, 400,000 users, more projects involved.
Okay, growing interest.
And the most recent one, Omega, which might still be running as we speak, brought in actual node operators and apparently got over 75,000 users restaking ETH through EigenLayer to help secure it.
Wow. 75,000 restakers on a testnet.
Yeah, that number really jumps out. It suggests pretty strong buy-in from the community, especially around that security model, even before the main network launch.
Definitely shows momentum. So what's next? What's the roadmap for, say, the rest of 2024?
The big one for Q2 2024 was the mainnet launch itself. That's the main event. Alongside that, they plan to get those liquid restaking protocols fully integrated, onboard the EigenLayer operators essential for security.
Right, the dual staking.
And the token generation event, the actual launch of the OMNI token. Plus, they mentioned onboarding over $11 billion in committed value as these XERC20 tokens secured by Omni.
$11 billion. Committed from the start.
That's the figure they put out, yeah. It highlights the scale they're aiming for in terms of assets being interoperable through Omni right away.
That's a massive number. Okay, what about Q3, the third quarter?
Q3 looks focused on getting those natively global applications actually running on the Omni EVM. They also talked about making deployment easier for devs, something called multi-rollup declarative deployments.
Sounds technical, like making it easier to push apps out everywhere.
Kind of, yeah. More like a cloud deployment experience, they suggested. Like using Kubernetes, but for rollups. And also releasing a TypeScript library to help devs build these cross-rollup front ends more easily.
So lots of developer-focused stuff in Q3, making it easier to build these global apps. And looking further out, Q4.
Q4 plans seem to be about expansion, integrating with other data availability systems like Eigendia or Celestia options beyond just posting data to Ethereum L1.
Could mean lower costs or different performance trade-offs.
Potentially, yeah. Also exploring attestation sharding to handle way more cross-rollup messages. And finally, bringing in multi-party computation MPC providers.
APC. That's often linked to institutional adoption, isn't it? Making custody easier for big players.
Exactly. So potentially opening the door for larger financial institutions to interact with this unified rollup ecosystem through Omni.
It's a packed roadmap.
Yeah.
Very ambitious. Okay, let's quickly touch on the business side. Who are they working with, partnering with to make all this happen?
They need a whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, number one is the Ethereum L2s themselves.
Yeah.
Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, Base, Linea, you name it. They need deep integrations so Omni can talk to them smoothly. The more rollups connected, the stronger the network effect.
Makes total sense. Who else? You mentioned the restaking angle.
Absolutely. Liquid restaking protocols are vital. Etherfi, Renzo, Swell, Puffer. These are the platforms people use to restake their ETH on EigenLayer, since Omni relies on that restaked ETH for security.
Those protocols are essential partners.
Critical partners. And securing over $1 billion in commitments early on shows how important those relationships are.
And EigenLayer itself, naturally, is the foundation for that restaking.
Yep. Omni is one of the flagship projects in AVS using EigenLayer security. The testnet restaker numbers show that Link is strong.
What about new rollups, making it easy for them to launch with Omni integration?
That's where rollups as a service providers come in. Companies like Conduit, Caldera, AltLayer. If they integrate Omni into their service,
Then anyone using them to launch a rollup gets Omni interoperability baked in from day one.
exactly, streamlines the process massively.
And finally, who actually runs the nodes and keeps the Omni network ticking?
Those are the infrastructure partners. Think node operators, validator services like A41, BlockDaemon, Chorus1. These companies provide the hardware and expertise to run the network securely and reliably. They accept delegations of OMNI and restaked ETH to help secure the chain.
Okay, so it really is a broad coalition across the ecosystem. Seems like they've thought through the necessary partnerships. So wrapping this up, what are the main things we should take away about Omni Network?
I think the core idea is tackling that fragmentation problem in the Ethereum rollup world. Omni's offering itself as a dedicated layer 1 to create seamless communication between L2s.
Right, the integrated rollup layer.
Key features are that dual staking security model using OMNI and restaked ETH, the fast Comet BFT consensus, and especially Omni EVM, which promises to make building cross-rollup apps much, much simpler for developers.
And the ONI token itself is central for gas, governance, staking.
Exactly. And their testnet progress, those partnership announcements, the big commitment numbers, it all points to significant momentum behind this project.
It definitely feels like a serious attempt to solve a growing pain point for Ethereum. If it works as planned, it could really smooth out the experience for both devs and users, making the whole rollup ecosystem feel more unified.
Yeah, potentially much more fluid. By hiding the complexity of moving between rollups, it could unlock new kinds of dApps that just weren't practical before. Imagine apps pulling liquidity or features from multiple rollups at once without you even noticing.
That's the dream, isn't it? Seamless composability across the whole ecosystem.
Pretty much.
So a final thought for you, the listener. If Omni, or something like it, succeeds in making Ethereum rollups truly interconnected, how might that change the game? What new possibilities open up when applications aren't confined to just one layer 2, but can operate fluidly across many? It's definitely something to keep an eye on as this whole space evolves. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.